Last but not least, is Lindsay Reid. Lindsay is the Chief Executive Officer of Minbos Resources Limited. He's a mining engineer with 30 years experience in exploration, development, operations and corporate finance. And he's worked in mineral sands, copper and tin operations, obtaining a mine manager certificate. After completing an MBA, he worked as a resource analyst in the Australian equity markets, and since he has started and managed a number of resource companies with projects in a range of commodities in Australia, Africa and Asia. And we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Leanne. That's a lot more serious than the one I provided. Firstly, let me thank Bill and the team for putting on Africa Down Under this year. It's an important forum for the African continent and Australia. And under much adversity, you've done a fantastic job. Secondly, to all our friends in Africa, we miss you. We look forward to seeing you next year. And para nosotros, amigos en Angola, el proyecto Cabinda Fosfatos está aconteciendo. Nos veremos en breve, para la gracia de Dios. To all our friends in Angola, the project Cabinda Phosphate is happening. We look forward to seeing you soon, God willing. So, did I miss the training course on this?
I'm not sure.
There we go.
There you go.
The Minbos released a scoping study on the Cabinda Phosphate project back in August, which I'm sure you can all read. It shows that it's a 21-year life project with robust returns for investors. We've now engaged DRA Global and a whole team of consultants, and they're charging along with a DFS, getting ready for project financing next year. But today I didn't so much want to talk about the project, but the impact that that project can have. And I call it like the impact of investment in Angola and also in Middle Africa. So these countries here that you can see on the map are the countries that the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, defines as Middle Africa. They have a population of 170 million people and even more arable hectares. Agriculture is the dominant employer or occupier of people, and yet Middle Africa, despite the advantages of the land and the rain and the people, is still a food importer in Africa. The missing ingredient to unlock the potential there is fertiliser. Compared to the rest of the world, sub-Saharan Africa utilises only a fraction of the fertiliser that the rest of the world utilises. Compared to the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, Middle Africa uses even a smaller fraction of fertiliser despite its population and its food needs. There's no primary fertiliser manufacturer in the whole of Middle Africa. There are some blenders, but nobody actually makes a primary nutrient for any of those 170 million people to use. It's all imported, as some of their food is. We have to remember that farming is really mining. Every time you put a plant in the ground, it's an extractive mineral industry plant. It pulls out not just the major macronutrients, the nitrogen, the phosphate and the potassium, but it pulls out the secondary nutrients, the calcium, the sulphur, and it pulls out the micronutrients, the copper, the zinc, the selenium, the things that are essential for, one, making the plant grow, and two, for making you grow when you eat the plant. If we want to keep having the soils feeding us, then we need to keep feeding the soils. So the benefits of that, as I've alluded to, are the nutrition. You know, if we can feed the soils and we can change the yields of these crops, then first thing we solve is the hunger. And people need a certain amount of calories to live. And in many areas of the world, we're deficient in some of those calories. If we can improve the amount of calories that are available using the fertiliser, then we will go a long way at a personal level to alleviating the hunger. If we can improve it in a regional level, we'll go a long way at that regional level to improving food security and the uncertainty that goes with food security. At a social level, the big advantage of this is that you'll take a family that currently farms a larger area of ground with a lot of people to feed themselves. And if we can provide them with some nutrients and improve those yields quite dramatically, then that same number of family can use less hours and less land, which means there's more time and resources available for social development of their own families and their own communities. One of the things and those conversations are often had in many, many different forums, but one of the things that's often left behind, and I think where our project can make a small contribution, is what they call silent hunger. It's very easy to put the macronutrients in the ground to make the plants grow. You grow the plants, you eat them, you satisfy your hunger. Silent hunger is when the micronutrients have disappeared from your soil. They're not presenting in the plants, or they're not presenting in your diets, and they're important for your development, and your body will know this. And while we see extreme micronutrient deficiencies in some part of the world, Africa being one of them, micronutrient deficiency is also important in places of the world where there's obesity, and it can be a cause of obesity because people keep eating because their body is looking for the micronutrient that they don't have. There's a number of ways you can fix the micronutrient deficiency. The first way is eat the right foods. So eat some beans if you want some iron. You can actually choose the right type of food. Grow the right corn and you will get vitamin A. And one of the other ways you can do this, and we will hope to do this with our phosphate plant, is you can fortify the fertiliser so that your zinc or your boron or your selenium arrives in the fertiliser and is delivered to the plant and then is delivered to the population. So we're building a plant that can add up to 5 different micronutrients into the phosphate, and we think that's one of the big advantages of actually making a primary nutrient in a region or in a country, is you can actually start to tailor the nutrients for what the population needs, not just what the plant needs. Our project offers a number of ways of avoiding or adopting or addressing environmental issues. One of the first and most obvious ones is there's projected to be a drop in yields in certain parts of Africa, and Middle Africa is one of them, as a result of the impacts of changing climate. If you add some fertiliser, then you can go some way to mitigating those yield gaps. Very directly with our product, we're using a phosphate rock, not a water-soluble fertiliser, so the phosphate doesn't dissolve as readily and get into the waterways and cause the problems that it can. It tends to come out more like a natural slow-release fertiliser and make itself available to the plant as and when it requires it. And along with that, we can bring in some practices like no-till and cover cropping, which are very prevalent in Brazil in similar soils and crops and climates, and that can avoid erosion, retain water, retain carbon in the soil, and add a lot of advantages. And we've got what I think are some exciting initiatives to be able to roll out that knowledge from Brazil into Angola, which obviously speaks the same language far better than I did previously. So our project, it's small. You can go and look at the scoping study. It's not a large project. We get some good returns. It's going to be good for the investors. But the big opportunity is that it's providing the kick-starting nutrient for agriculture, phosphate. But phosphate is probably only 5% of the inputs into a typical farming situation. So if we're going to produce $1.5 billion worth of phosphate over the next 20 years, that means somebody else has got to provide $30 billion worth of other inputs. Whether it's transportation, whether it's other nutrients, whether it's land, whether it's insurance. There's going to be a myriad of opportunities that develop in this region around the agriculture that develops on the back of this project. That's just the inputs. If you look at the downstream, I can't even begin to calculate how much this is going to change the region. The region already has some advantages. There's lots of logistics there. A lot of these were actually built for when it was a dominant agricultural producing region last century. This century, a lot of that infrastructure is it is underutilised. There's roads, there's rails, there's ports, and there's lots of underutilised land. I think what we'll be able to do here is actually kickstart that and start at a scale that is intra-regional. It doesn't require to bring huge big ships of fertiliser coming in at a single product. We can scale at a level that provides the diversity of the needs for the products. And if you look at every large agricultural region in the world, they all started this way with a Kickstarter phosphate project. It was islands in the Pacific for Australia and New Zealand, and similar in other, it was the phosphate down in Florida for the US. So the other thing that will have a small impact on is we'll make a direct contribution in tax to the country. Our suppliers will make an even bigger contribution in taxes to the country. The market, I've got no idea how big the contribution will be there. But what we will see is that we'll tap markets that are literally millions of people. We see them in two ways: people that grow to eat and people that grow to sell. And if we grow both of those markets together, then that will be a huge advantage for this country and this region. And what I just find remarkable, and I struggle to comprehend, and I do pray that I don't drop the ball, is that we can kickstart all of this with a project that has a starting capital of only 25 million, but the benefits is like just so many more multiples than that. So the project for me as a mining engineer is actually quite unnerving. When we're in the mining industry, we'll put our samples into the laboratory and we'll push to get our results back next week. In this industry, I've already learnt that you put your seeds into the field and you pray for some results next year. And it's very, very disturbing, let me tell you. So we're just about to start our 4th field trial season, and we've got parallel greenhouse seasons going as well. But what we've seen from the results so far is that we've got a project that's going to make a difference, and the way it's going to make a difference is it's going to be able to make other people develop their own livelihoods. And I think that's the best way you can make a difference. So as we go out and have our lunch today, remember that others would like to be making their own lunch, and I'm hoping that we can help millions of people make their own lunch as we go forward. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Lindsay. That was great. I suppose also, the reality of the world now is people are really pushing, and the big funds and the big money are looking for sustainable and in the ESG push. And so I think, this is a great story, and you spoke with real passion about not just about mining, but about what it can do. So I really enjoyed that. Thank you very much.